I found out quickly that making money just dancing in Mexico wasn't cutting it, so I agreed to their offer to prostitute myself. Okay, my name is Nicole and I'm from Germany.
What part of Germany?
I was born and raised in Bavaria, in Germany.
Until what age?
I moved to the States at like 24. Yeah,
English is English your second language?
it's my second language.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You still speak very fluent German?
Yes. When I was 2 years old, my father, he passed away in a car accident. So I grew up with only my mother, my two brothers, and then I did have a stepfather in the picture. But their relationship also ended after like 14 years or so. So from there on, it was only my mom and then my two brothers. My upbringing wasn't as healthy. My family was very dysfunctional. My mom and a lot of other people in my family, they have alcoholism in their story. So addiction has always been a really big part of my life, just in my upbringing. So growing up, even though everything was really dysfunctional, I kind of like tried to belong with other people and other groups of people, and that was mainly older than me. So they were drug users, and so at the age of 13, I picked up my first drug, and yeah, that's just like what my life was like at that point in time. You know, it kind of helps me to forget, you know, all the problems or issues that I was going through at that time. Well, at least that's what they told me. I wasn't aware of anything like of the consequences. That's not really something that we would talk about. We were just, you know, trying to have a good time and party and not really thinking any further than just that. I picked up at 13 the first time, and then I kept using for like 7 years. Then I met my now ex-husband. He was in the military, and he told me that if I wanted to be with him, then I couldn't be a drug user. At that point, I decided I would pursue my dreams and goals that I had. I wanted to be a mom, and I wanted to just, you know, grow up or have that family that I never had growing up. So I quit using, and then the year after, that's when I had my first child. That's when my first son was born. It gave me a new sense of purpose, and I thought, now I have everything that I ever wanted. I have a husband, and we have a house, and we have a child now, and it was just that little like picture perfect, you know, situation that I always wanted for myself. Yes, so about 3 years or 2-3 years after I quit using drugs, I moved to the United States.
Where did you move to the United States?
So after I left Germany, I lived in Tacoma, Washington. So I was living in Washington State for a little while until he finished his military service, and then we moved to California. So I had one more daughter in that time that I was with him. However, my daughter, she has a different father. Our marriage was practically broken before we even could enjoy it. We had a lot of problems in our marriage. And so I had a child within my marriage, and we tried to work things out even though she wasn't his. He was really accepting of it after some time. He had to get used to it at first, and yeah, then our marriage, we decided it was just at the end of our marriage, and we decided to file for a divorce, and we got divorced in 2018. So at the time of my divorce, I had full custody of my son and my daughter, but that changed when I fell back into drugs. So the second time, it was really, I wanted to just forget for a little while what I was going through with my divorce, and then I found out I was pregnant by somebody else, and then that pregnancy ended before it really started. And I just wanted to forget for just a day, and in my mind I was like, you know what, I quit so easily after using for 7 years. One time is not gonna hurt me, and I can just put it down just like that. But that wasn't the case. So when I first picked up the drug again, I was still trying to hold my job. I was trying to, go to work. At that point we had split up, even like he was living in his place and I was living in my place. And California prices are pretty high. So I was trying to make it work and go to my job, but that just wasn't possible because I would get paranoid and that they would see that I'm under the influence and that I would get fired. So I just stopped going to work. And then I started working at a different job, and I was trying to work both jobs, but the other job was at a gentleman club. So I started to be a dancer, and being a dancer and under the influence, it was really risky. I was very protective over my children, and I think due to my drug use, when I got really paranoid and I thought that like people were following me home, I would call my ex-husband and I would tell him like I cannot come around the kids for a few days. I don't know, it seems like there's somebody after me, and I didn't want my kids to be put at risk. I think at first he still just let me have time with the kids because he kind of needed me as a backup plan because he was going to work, and the times when he was at work I was watching the children, and then we would switch. So I continued to use drugs from when I relapsed in 2018. I continued using till last year. I did have some period of sobriety where I tried to get clean and like rehabs or just like tried to do it on my own, but it wouldn't last for very long. So it's just, and it was very scary. It totally got worse because I think the more drugs I was using, the more paranoid I got. And then at one point I started losing my mind. I went completely crazy. So I lost my job and I lost my house, right? The place that I was living in, when I lost it, the landlord I had, he was a really creepy guy, and he would once he found out that I was a dancer, he would ask me to send him pictures of me, and so I was afraid to even go back to that place. So that was all in 2018, right? He would let me stay at the house while he wasn't home, but then at one point he would agree that it's okay for me to stay there. But things still got worse because at that point I'm not sure if he had anything to do with feeding into my paranoia or whatever was going on, but at that point I really lost grip to my life, to me as a human being. I felt like I wasn't even human at one point. My mind was just so gone that I thought I was running on a battery. I thought that I was connected to my cell phone, and if my cell phone dies, then I will die. So I had this meth-induced psychosis that I just couldn't find myself to get out of. I was lost. I would freak out, and I was just insane. I was thinking I could change the weather with my phone settings. I was completely gone. There was not a normal thought that would run through my head. It was all just this craziness. I would use myself, my body, to get drugs in return. I started working as a dancer in Mexico, and I thought that I could just be dancing just how I did it here in the United States, and it will kind of help me make ends meet and just try to provide for my children. But then I got to Mexico, and it's a lot about prostitution there. It's a lot about just things that aren't even legal here. So I found out quickly that making money just dancing in Mexico wasn't cutting it, so I agreed to their offer to prostitute myself. When I first started dancing, I started at a club further into Mexicali, away from the border, because I didn't want to risk running into any people that I could know from over here that could go to my ex-husband or just give my ex-husband's family and him a hard time, or my children. So I would go further into Mexicali and I would start working there. And at first they said I could bring like a friend of mine or something. So I would take some of my guy friends who were clean, and they knew Spanish, they would kind of look out for me. But then at one point everything changed, and they told me I couldn't bring my friends anymore, and which caused a problem because that far into Mexicali I didn't have any phone service. And so even if there was an emergency, I would not have known how to even call for help. So I stopped working at that establishment, and I went closer to the border. I went to audition there, and they really liked me, so I started working there. And there was also prostitution there. So I continued doing it at that establishment as well. I was working as a prostitute. But even working that close to the border, it was like my fear was coming true. I would meet people that know me from over here. So everything like carried into the United States. People would treat me different here, just like knowing like I'm a prostitute. Like to them, I was just an easy target. So I went to jail when I lost my children. I remember it was in December of 2019, and I remember my ex-husband, he came home one day and he said, "I'm moving out and I'm not taking you." And I'm like, "What about the children?" And so he's like, "They can come with me." And then I said, how could you do this to me? You know, I left my whole family, I left my whole life behind in Germany. So I would just put the blame on him at that time. So we started fighting. His mom came to support him, and she was there with him, and she stayed the night. And I woke up in the morning to him just already like bagging and boxing everything up. He was packing everything up, ready to move, and then we started fighting again. And my children, they were in the living room with their grandma, and then I don't know who called the police, but somebody called the police, and they showed up, and they were told that I had drugs in the home where my children lived, which was true. I did have drugs in my home. I didn't know where else to put them, or I didn't have any other place to put them. So when the police arrived, at that point, I don't even know where my children were. I'm thinking that my ex-husband's mom probably took them aside somewhere so they don't have to see everything. That's when the officer told me that I was under arrest, that I'm going to jail. And I was just scared. I was like, I'm not from here. I'm not from this country. I don't know what's going to happen. So I went on Facebook Live, and I Facebook Lived my whole arrest. I watched that video after my release, and I was just shocked. I was like, this is not even me. This person, I don't know, but you know, at that point it was me. But I was in denial. CPS showed up, and they told me that I was losing custody of my children, or they were taking custody for that moment. And they sent my daughter to a receiving home since she wasn't his biological child, so they separated my kids, and that was always my worst fear. While I was in jail, the CPS lady came and she told me everything. I just remember I was sitting, not like sitting, I was more laying in this little cubicle with the glass in between. She was on the other side, and as soon as she told me, I just remember I broke down crying, and I just wanted it to stop.
Doing great.
You know, my kids were really, at that point, the only reason that I had to live. And even though I knew that I wasn't a good mother at that point, I still tried my best, even though being under the influence, like how good of a mother can you really be? And I know I put my children at risk, but at that moment, I thought it was unfair. I thought the whole world was against me, and they shouldn't take my children, because then I don't have a reason to live anymore. What I got arrested for was 2 counts of child endangerment, resisting arrest, and possession of drugs. So my bail was pretty high because of the child endangerment charges. I had a restraining order that I couldn't get close to my children, just because I just wanted that pain to stop. And I'm like, okay, well, they're not giving me my children back, so there's no point for me even to try and get clean. I have nowhere to go. My children are gone, and you know, I was so skinny that like the year of 2019, I got so sick that my organs were shutting down. I had like kidney infections. I almost died because of all my drug use. I would never eat. I was really malnutrition, and I don't even know how I made it out, you know? I think the reason why I would resort to drugs was because I didn't know how to identify my feelings. I didn't know, like, was I sad, or was I angry, or what was I? So I had to learn all the emotions, and I had to just like help myself and try to the best of my ability, you know, to like train my brain again, right? I did a lot of research. I mean, I had a lot of time. I was not doing anything but getting high. So I was trying to retrain my brain, but that was not enough.
So you were trying to retrain your brain, you're still using.
I was still using, exactly. That's just, that's like the insanity that comes with addiction. It's like you do the same thing over and over expecting a different outcome, right? So that didn't really help me, and I was still, I was trying to get my children back. I would go to the court hearings, high, of course. I was high. I thought I could just somehow manipulate my way out and get my children back because they're my children. And I thought I had a right to just have them in my life. I was manipulating myself because I was so in denial because I thought I could not live without the drugs. I thought I needed the drugs to just function, to walk, to clean, to like do whatever I needed to do. I thought I needed the drugs for me to run. So the first time that I tried to get clean, I was living in our old car. The car didn't run or anything. It was just the window was busted out, and I put my stuff in there. I was like just parked at this parking lot of this restaurant that was not in business, and I thought that wouldn't be a problem. But then one morning, 2 officers showed up, and they already knew me from this whole year that my life was just out of control, and they said, "Nicole, we never wanted to see you get to this point. But the owners of the restaurant called and we have to tow the car." And I said, "You can't tow my home. I live here." I said, "I don't know what I'm supposed to do." So they asked me if it was okay for them to call their pastor. And, at that point, I wasn't a believer. And I was like, what is the pastor going to do for me? And I agreed, yeah, call your pastor. Bring him. And he came with his wife, Charlene. And the officers, they said, "Nicole, if you have any drugs on you, we're not going to do anything. Just throw them away." We went to the dumpster and I said, "Yep, nothing here. I have no drugs." So I thought I could just take the drugs with me. I remember the pastor and his wife, they took me to their church. They let me call my mom. I didn't have phone service or anything that was working. So they let me call my mom in Germany just to let her know that everything will be okay and I'm going to rehab. Then I started feeling bad because I still had the drugs on me. I think that's when my conscience kicked in, and I went to the restroom, but I didn't dump it. I dumped it in my hand and I just snorted it all. So from the church, they took me, after I called my mom, they took me to the Christian rehab. And funny, it's that Christian rehab that was waiting for me already for over a week. So, but like I said, I wasn't a believer, so I'm like, oh yeah, this is funny. But I decided to stay. I was really broken. I never really ate anymore. I was like out of my mind, and they just welcomed me with open arms. And
How did that feel for you?
it felt weird because I just felt like it felt weird because around that time, or just like for a long time in my life, I just felt like nobody really cared. Nobody really gave a shit, to what I'm doing, or like, especially with how my life turned out, me going back to drugs, me being a prostitute, like my family turned away from me, my mom telling me, "I can't help you, there's nothing I can do to help you." And my friends telling me, like, "You're disgusting." I had nowhere to go. And then I'm meeting these strangers and they welcome me with open arms. It takes a little while to get the drugs out of your system, and it takes even longer for your thinking and everything to normalize. It doesn't just go away after a few days. So I had a blackout period of like 30 days, I think, where I wasn't allowed to talk to anybody. And but I explained to them that it's really important for me to check in with my grandpa, because my grandma was in hospice. That's the last thing I knew before I checked into the rehab. So after being there for 5 days, it was right around Christmas. I got there on December 18th of 2019. So like 5 days after I got there, they let me call my grandpa to check in how things are going and how my grandma is doing. So when I called him, he told me that my grandma had passed away. So my grandma, she died. My grandma, she died from cancer. She was a really important person for me in my life. My grandpa and my grandma, they were mainly the people that raised me. After my dad passed away, that my grandpa is my dad's father, right? So we had a really close relationship. We still have to this day, but my grandma, she was one of the most important people in my life. And hearing that she had passed away, I just wanted to run again. I just needed to numb all these feelings, but at that point, I let God in my heart. I started believing because everything I can't believe in that many coincidences. I know that there's a God out there, and at that point, I realized that. I remember we prayed a lot. They were there for me, and I stayed. I stayed in rehab, but I still wasn't like fully committed to being clean. So I decided to stay in the rehab. Things were going better, and they started to look better when I was able to get visitation with my children. I was able to go to court and tell them the progress that I'm making. And I thought that would just be enough for them to just hand me my kids back, but they didn't. After only being there for 6 weeks, I went back out and I stayed clean on my own for a little while. I was volunteering at this, it's called Brawley Feed the Need, where they feed homeless people, and they let me stay in their break room on the couch so I didn't have to be out in the streets. But then COVID hit, and they had to close the establishment down because they couldn't let the people in anymore. And with them having to close down, I was out on the streets again. Then through COVID, they offered us to get like hotel vouchers. So I went to get a hotel voucher, and I was still clean at that point. And then on my daughter's birthday, April 23rd, I was in the hotel, and I was so nervous about going to her birthday. So I thought I could have a little drink in the morning. I didn't see anything wrong with that. And I was getting high by noon. That quick. Right after that, I called my ex-husband, and I told him, I'm so sorry, I'm not going to be able to make it today because I was high. And
did you feel a sense of like inner turmoil or regret? Like you had
yeah,
more of a conscious now?
Immediately I felt guilty. I was like, how can I let my children down again? Like, I felt embarrassed, and I didn't want my children to see me like that again. My son was already freaked out from when they arrested me. He was scared, and so I didn't go to the birthday. And then from there, I would just be on drugs off and on. I would try and go to a treatment facility where I would try to like move in with some guy. And then the guy that I was like hanging out with, and like his mom, she's a drug user, so we would all just get high together. And then he just thought that I was like his property, right? So and he would just, I don't know.
Okay, you're doing great.
So
It's too much.
okay, so I decided to leave him because he raped me, and he said that the drugs were the reason why he did that. He didn't have himself under control. So I thought, if you're getting clean, I will give you a chance. But he didn't, and so I reported it. He got locked up, but due to COVID, they released him after like a couple days. And so I moved to El Centro with a different hotel voucher. And I stayed out there at the hotel, and I was in contact with behavioral health, and I was trying to get help. I knew I needed to do something, and I didn't want to continue living that way. So I went to a rehab, and I finished that program.
You checked yourself in for how long?
I was there for 3 months, and it was a mental, like a social rehabilitation, not just for drugs. It was also for like mental problems and stuff. So, and I really liked that program. I was able to go to my son's birthday and, you know, call my children. I was able to have my phone. So things were going really good. And then this guy that I met like shortly after I relapsed, he like came back into my life and he just said, hey, if you don't have anywhere to stay, I have a trailer in the backyard, you can move in. And I remember I was clean at that time and he wasn't. And I said, what does it take for you to get clean? And he said, if I meet the right woman, but like I said, it's hard to pull somebody out of it. It's easier for them to pull you in. And that's exactly what happened. I started staying in his trailer in the backyard. I was thankful to just have a place, but things just started to get really bad. We were always fighting. I was being paranoid. He was really jealous. So this whole like domestic violence situation was created. We would like fight each other, and then I would call the police because I just wanted to get away. And they would come, but they would not take him or anything. They would take me, and they said it's because it's easier since I have like mental issues in my background, so it's easier for them to process me. And
so when they would take you, where would they take you?
They would take me to the crisis house, and from the crisis house they would try to get me into a rehab, but I was so caught up in my addiction that I would just tell them, no, I'm fine, and I was able to just manipulate my way out of it and just tell them I'm okay. I don't need your help, because I knew that it would just be a cycle that's never ending. I'm going to the crisis house and then I'm going to rehab, and then I call that guy I was staying with, and he would come to pick me up, and we would go use again and fight again, and it would just be the same thing over and over. I was just...
Why would you call him?
Because I didn't want to be in the rehab. I always thought that things would change with us, because he would be really sweet then, and then I would just go back, and I'm thinking, okay, maybe we can both get clean and I can get my kids back, and he has his children, so I thought we could all just be a big family. I was in a trailer a lot. He didn't really want me going anywhere. Sometimes he would lock me in the trailer. I couldn't get out. And yeah, he would take my phones away from me, so I couldn't call my children or I couldn't call anybody, because he didn't want me talking to anyone. He would break my phone. He just he just wanted, I'm not sure exactly why he did all that. I think, he's being in this whole like insanity thing too. He's an addict himself, so.
So how did you finally break that?
How I finally broke that? So I remember in 2021, I was praying and I asked God, I'm like, God, all I really want is I want a child. I need a purpose to just like have my life back, and then maybe when I have a child, then I will get my life back together, right? So I kept praying and I kept praying, and God blessed me with a child, and I got pregnant. He didn't believe it was his. We would fight a lot throughout my pregnancy. He would tell me, just go to the home, and I said, because I continued using. I just couldn't stop using for some reason. I'm not sure. My prayer was answered, and I still couldn't stop. So, and I told him, it's your responsibility too. You can get clean too. It's both of our child, so we should both get clean. He said, it's my child, it's in my stomach, so I have to get clean. And so I was trying to get into rehabs. The rehabs in the Imperial Valley, they would turn me away, because I would either leave from them before and they couldn't accommodate me being pregnant. So they said they don't have a spot for me. So I reached out to a rehab in San Diego County. That's when I moved to the San Diego County last year in February 3rd. So February 3rd is my clean date. I got to rehab 8 months pregnant, still high. And I was just always praying that God will protect my child, that it's not my child's fault that I couldn't put the drug down. So I thought I had a month left, and in my mind, I was thinking, okay, it's all gonna be okay. I'm getting clean now. The doctors won't even know, CPS won't even know, and I will have my child with me. So 5 days after I got clean, I had my son in an emergency C-section. He was born a month early. He was healthy. He was just fine. But I wanted to make sure that they could take good care of him if, he needed to have any special needs or something, because I did use drugs my whole pregnancy. So I told them at the hospital, I'm a drug user and I just got clean and I was using my whole pregnancy with this child. So they knew and they contacted CPS. But this time I decided I wasn't gonna run. I wasn't gonna give up my seat. I wanted to have that child that I prayed for, that God blessed me with. So I said I would, stay in rehab. He had to stay in a NICU for a little bit. And in my mind, I still thought, I'm in rehab. They're going to give me my child. Until I had that visit from CPS at my rehab. I was released. Elijah was still in the hospital. Just because he was born early and he needed a little bit of help with like eating. But otherwise than that, he was fine. So she came and she said, just looking at your history, you're not getting your child. Like, you're a chronic relapser. It's just a matter of time. You only have 2 weeks clean. And I said, that's not, I was like, this is not fair. I need my child. I'm staying in rehab. I want this child. So she said, there's no way. There's no way. And then we were talking about his father and like if my child could go with him, and I said, no, he's a drug user, a drug dealer. Like, no, there's no way. So since I don't have family here, CPS decided they would put my newborn baby into foster care, into a foster family. So my son was in the system. And at that point, I wanted to just walk out of rehab with that lady. At the same time, I was like, there's no point. I already lost 2 of my children. Now it's the 3rd child that I'm losing. Like, I just wanted to give up, but I remember I just ran out. I just left her there. I ran out. I was crying. I was screaming along the hallway. I was like, just like hitting the wall, and I went into the bathroom and I just like hit the wall, and my counselor came in. I was like crying on the floor, just like crying like a baby. I didn't know what to do. I was just like hopeless for that moment. And she picked me up and she looked at me and she said, Nicole, if anyone can do it, then it's you. I said, okay, just give me a little bit and I might come out. So I remember I went to my bed and I grabbed my Bible and I went on my knees and I was still crying, and I said, I can't do that. And I put my Bible on my bed and I just opened it and I just like started like, moving the pages and just stopped somewhere. And I thought, like, whatever this is, like, then I will know. Can I do this? Because I can't, but God can. So I opened the Bible and it stopped at, I forgot the verse. I wish I still knew it. But it said something about how God is our refuge and he puts us on the highest mountaintops to like keep us protected. So I knew I have a good shot. At that point, I went out to lunch and I took my Bible with me and I showed everyone. I'm like, look, this is the verse that I found right now. And they said, yeah, you got this. Everybody was really supporting. And so I just had to figure out, okay, how am I gonna do this? Because I didn't want my child to be in the system. I didn't want to feel like I let him down. And so while he was still in the NICU, they let me visit him like daily. I would go there, I would sit with him, I would just hold him, and I would just like touch his little hands and his little fingers, and I would just say, I promise you, I will come back for you. I will not let you go with anybody else. But it was too early, so they had to release him from the hospital on February 22nd of 2022. He went to a foster family. I didn't know where he was. But the foster mom, she was really nice. So I knew that he was taken care of, and I just thought, this is my opportunity right now to just like get things back on track a little bit and just to heal my brain and heal my heart. And so I stayed in rehab and I did, all the classes that they asked of me. Meanwhile, I was still like, I would get supervised visitation with my child. So after some time, they said, okay, now we can talk about like unsupervised visitation soon. And I said, no, I want more. I'm working really hard for this. So I told my attorney that I wanted to take everything to trial. So I wanted to go to trial at court. And the process when you get your children or child removed at CPS, it's just you get supervised visitation if possible. Then you get unsupervised visitation, then overnights, and then eventually you'll get your children back. So it's a really lengthy process. So I went and I wanted to take it to trial. So they set the trial date for April 6th of 2022. So my son was like almost 2 months old at that point. And he's been in the foster family for like a month and a week or so. So the CPS people, they, at court, they just said, no, she's a chronic relapser. It's not a good place for a baby. She's in rehab. So we do see progress, but it's just not enough. She doesn't have enough clean time. And then they put me on the stand and I just shared my story with them. And I shared with them, like, this is where I'm coming from. This is how everything went down. And this is what I'm doing about it now. So as I shared everything, the CPS caseworker, she shared her part, what she thinks the best recommendation for the child would be, which was to stay in foster care. And the judge, he was like active listening. You could tell that he was involved and just like, he didn't judge me really. Maybe he did, but I didn't notice, right? But he listened to me. And so at the end of the hearing, after we had all like shared our part, the judge's words were that today the mother has talked her baby back into her arms. And from there, I just, I knew I was getting my son that day, right? And I was so happy I didn't give up. I didn't walk out and I just, gave up. And all my fighting, it was just like it was worth every minute of it, right? I called the rehab immediately and I said, my baby's coming to stay today. You need to get everything ready. And I'm trying to manage everything. So I was supposed to have a visitation with him that day, but I told him like, never mind, I'm just gonna have him later and I'm gonna have him forever. And I just knew that, my promise that I made him, it wasn't an empty promise because I was coming back for him and I got him back. And it was just so at like 8 o'clock that night, there was some throughout the day, there was some issues. They're like, oh, the CPS person has to go check the room if everything is okay. The staff that was working that day, they didn't want to approve her going up there. It's like confidentiality. And I was like, no. You're not stopping me now. I'm getting my child today. They said he was coming home today. So I made it happen that the CPS worker could go upstairs and check everything. And then shortly after that, her and the foster mom showed up and they gave me my baby and everything that they had for him. And, I had him ever since. So he lives with me now. Ever since I got him back and I was able to prove to the court, I was granted overnight visitation with my other 2 children, which I haven't had in 4 years since I lost them. So my kids, they come visit me once a month and I get them on school, like summer break and Christmas break, Thanksgiving, but we will switch off. My ex-husband and me, we switch off 1 year on, 1 year off. Like this year, I will have them for Christmas and I'm really excited. My kids, they have created this bond. My little one, he's not even 2 years, but he knows their name. He says their name and he's just so close with them, even though they don't spend that much time together. But my baby, he's thriving in my care. He's such a cute little guy. I just love him so much and I'm so glad I didn't give up. Because it was difficult at first and I really wanted to just walk away from it. But it's just ever since I started my recovery this time and I didn't go back since last year. So I'm coming up on 2 years clean and I have my children in my life. I'm I'm not in this lost dark place anymore. I overcame. And yeah, I have my children in my life now, and my life is just normalizing itself slowly but surely. There's a lot of difficulties like, me being in jail, me still having all my charges like hang over my head. But once I finish my program, like very soon, all my charges will be dropped. I don't have to like face that anymore. But I know that there's a lot of people that just look at like the person that I used to be, right? So, and it's difficult sometimes to get them to understand that that's not the person I am today. So I think for me, it's just like I have a lot of support today in my support group, like the people around me, that I know people have that, that way of thinking of like, once an addict, always an addict, once a criminal, always a criminal, but that's not always the case. Okay, so at the program, once they start us getting ready for a job, it's we're starting all these classes, and one of them is the career readiness, where we come up with a career path of where we want our life to go. So they have us go to this, it's like a job fair where a lot of companies, they will come out and they already kind of know our background of like what the family's been through that are at that program. So that also kind of helps. That's when Solutions for Change, they invited Future Stitch as one of the companies to be there for the job presentation. That day, that's when I met Sarah Shoup. She came in and she was just like this bright light. They just like flooded the room, right? And I really just loved how she is. I just loved her whole being there. And she had mentioned that, one of the people that goes to the same program, he works here too. So I guess Sarah was really excited to see who else is at that program. So she did the presentation on what Future Stitch does and their mission, and just shared with us like what Future Stitch is doing here in Oceanside. And that's when she asked at the very end of the presentation, she asked, does anyone have any questions? And so I said, I do have a question. And she said, yeah. And I said, when can I start? So I applied at Future Stitch, and I had my interview on May 9th of this year, which was a day before my birthday. And so it was May 8th. I had my interview at Future Stitch, and on May 9th, they told me that they would like to offer me a job. So my job offer that I got was to work on the production floor and also shadow the bookkeeper to see if that would be something I would like to do, because that's what I came to interview for the bookkeeping position. So I was able to accept that job offer. My program agreed that it would be a good place for me to start working at. And on May 22nd, that's when I started at Future Stitch, and I've been here since. Well, it's still something that I'm getting used to, that people tell me they value me, or they love me, or they are glad that I'm here. And that's something that I would like continuously hear coming out of Sarah's mouth, where she just said, I'm so glad you're here, and like, I love you so much being here, and I'm so glad you found us. And it just feels really good. It feels really good. I'm not judged here, and they just welcome me with open arms here. Yeah, my life has been getting like better and better by the minute. Since I've been working here, I feel like they've been giving me more responsibilities, and they just see something in me that I haven't seen in myself. And that alone, that just helps me so much in like how I am as a mother with my children. And through my job now, I was able to buy my own car. And so I have a car, I have transportation, I have an income now. I can actually buy my children something for Christmas. And, it feels really good. And just to like know that I'm loved and that I'm valued here, it's great. They trust me with so many things and they're just like, they know that I'm capable of doing all these things. Like recently we prepared for an audit, and I was pulled from the production floor to help in the office. And it's just every time I would come up and just like present my work to either Esteban or Sarah or whoever else, even Taylor, it's just like I got like so much reassurance that like, yep, that's perfect. That's exactly what we've been looking for. And it's just like, I'm just like stronger as a person now. I have more confidence in myself, and that's all because they trust me with things that I probably would never like, ask like, oh, can I do that? Because I didn't really have that much confidence in myself. But now I'm like really confident. I think what I would like to tell people that are still like caught up in their darkness. It's just simply that like don't ever give up, because if it's, if you're not dead, it's not the end, right? So you always have a little bit of fight left in you, and that little bit, that's enough. Because I think the most important thing to do, I just read that recently in this awesome book that we're reading at our book club at Future Stage. It just simply says you have to stay open, because that's the way that the light gets in. And if you ever like close yourself off from like the world, or just like your family, your friends, your people, just like, from yourself, if you're just like so closed off, like then you'll stay in that dark place. So always stay open, because that's the only way that the light will get in. Okay, so the programs that they offer for us at Future Stage, I really like all of the classes that they offered me so far. I think I attended every one of them. We have all these classes, and the classes, they really help. They help us as the people that we are, or the person that I am. They really help me. They help we have an hour lunch. An hour is a lot of time on your hands to go do something stupid, and with the classes, we learn something that will help us, and we benefit from that. So that's why it's called the Bossage program, because we learn how to boss up, and I like that, so I learn a lot in the classes. I love being here, but where I go from here, I see myself in the future definitely getting my children back, so I can be, whole again with all 3 of my children. And I really want to do something that has like a purpose to not just help people in their addiction, but like help people that face the same things as I have and just got their kids removed. And I want to be there to go to court with them, or it's called like a family liaison. That's what I would like to do, to just give them hope, that I can tell them, I've been there, I've been laying on that bathroom floor, and I got up, and you can too. And I just want to like tell them that it is possible. It doesn't matter, like I was in darkness and I didn't see it, like not even a little light, but I had to open myself up, and now, I'm flooded in the light. So I want to thank Taylor, Sarah, Esteban, and my whole Future Stitch family for being there, for loving me on days that I can't love myself. I would like to, of course, thank God, because without God, I wouldn't be anything. And I know that God has a bright future for me, because His word says so. I'd like to thank my children for still loving me after everything that I put them through, for telling me that they're proud of me. And I feel like if even my children can see the good in me, then I'm pretty sure that other people will be able to do that same thing. They just have to see that change is possible. And I would like to thank Solutions for Change for giving me the opportunity to slowly get my life back together and not throw me in the cold water and just have me figure it out. So I'm really thankful for all the people that I've met in my journey, in my past and now, because every person, it brings a value to my life. I learned lessons, through people that I wouldn't learn if I didn't meet them. And some are good and some are bad, but I'm not going back. I'm just going forward from now. So yeah.